My mom told me, your brother's wedding is more important than your surgery. So I showed up to the reception with my hospital bracelet still on. Guess who suddenly looked like the villain? I'm Emily, 28 years old, female, and I've been replaying this one conversation with my mom like it's branded into my skull. I was sitting in her kitchen, pale from meds and still tender from the biopsy they'd just done, when she looked me dead in the eye and said, your brother's wedding is more important than your surgery. Like, imagine hearing that from your own mother, not a stranger, not a distant cousin who barely knows you. My mom. Patricia, 56, female. She said it so casually too, like she was telling me to pass the salt. The surgery wasn't optional. I had a mass in my abdomen, and the doctors weren't sure yet if it was cancerous. They wanted it out, fast. My surgeon scheduled me for the Friday before my brother Ryan's wedding. Ryan, 31, male, my mom's golden child, the kind who could commit arson and she'd call it fiery ambition. He was marrying his fiancée, Allison, 29, female, in a massive ballroom event that my parents had been treating like the second coming. I sat there at the table with my hands trembling, trying to process that she was actually putting flowers and centerpieces above my health. I asked her, so you're saying if I can't make it to the wedding, that's, what, disrespectful? She didn't even flinch. She just sipped her tea and said, Emily, weddings are once in a lifetime. Surgery can be rescheduled. I wanted to scream. Rescheduled? Like cancer would pencil itself into a Google Calendar. Ryan had always been the chosen one. Growing up, he got the new bike while I got the hand-me-down with duct tape on the seat. He got boys will be boys when he broke a neighbor's window. I got grounded for spilling juice on the couch. And Allison, don't even get me started. She adored the favoritism, leaned into it, treated me like some embarrassing side character in the Ryan show. But the worst part? My dad, Michael, 60, male, just sat there behind his newspaper and didn't say a damn word. That was his specialty. Silence as a shield. He wouldn't defend me, wouldn't contradict my mom, just hid behind the rustling of pages like if he didn't look at me, he wouldn't have to pick a side. That night, I lay in bed with the hospital wristband still around my arm from pre-op testing, staring at the ceiling, and something inside me just cracked. I realized they were never going to pick me. Never going to value me the way they valued Ryan. And maybe for the first time in my life, I stopped begging for scraps of love. Instead, I started planning, because if they wanted me at that wedding so badly, then I'd be there. But I wasn't going to make it easy for them. The week before the wedding felt like living in two parallel universes. On one side, I had surgeons, scans, and the looming shadow of possible malignancy. On the other, there were flowers, tux fittings, and my mom obsessing over whether the napkins should be ivory or cream. Every time I mentioned the surgery, Patricia would brush it off with this brittle smile. Don't be dramatic, Emily. Focus on the positives. Ryan's wedding will be the happiest day of our lives. Our lives, not mine, hers, his, never mine. I went into surgery Friday morning. They kept me overnight because of complications, more bleeding than expected. When I woke up groggy and hurting, the first text on my phone wasn't, "Are you okay?" or "We're here for you." It was from Patricia. "You'll still make it tomorrow, right? The photographer needs all siblings present for family shots." I stared at that text with my IV still in my arm, bile rising in my throat. Allison sent a follow-up an hour later. "Don't guilt-trip Ryan on his big day. Be supportive or stay quiet." Supportive, like my body hadn't just been cut open, like the thought of missing their Pinterest-perfect photo op made me the selfish one. I almost didn't go. I almost let them have their fairy tale without me. But lying in that hospital bed, I realized something. They'd written me off years ago. If I stayed quiet, they'd spin it like I was sulking. If I showed up, though, broken, bruised, visible, then everyone would see exactly what they were. So the next day, I signed myself out of the hospital AMA, against medical advice. The nurse warned me not to, begged me even. But I walked out still in my hospital bracelet, stitches pulling under my dress, a dull burn in my side with every step. When I got to the reception, people gasped. The aunt who always whispered about everyone's business pulled me aside and whispered, "Sweetheart, are you okay? You look pale." And that was the moment because the bracelet caught the light as I tucked my hair behind my ear. Everyone noticed. Ryan was already irritated because Allison's hairstylist was running late. When he saw me, his jaw clenched like I'd committed some cardinal sin. "You couldn't just change?" he hissed. Patricia swooped in like a hawk, smile plastered on her face, whispering through her teeth. "Emily, you're making this about you. Take that bracelet off now." But by then it was too late. Guests had started murmuring, asking why I looked like I belonged in a hospital bed instead of at a reception. Someone asked outright, "Wait, weren't you supposed to have surgery this week?" And I swear to God, watching Patricia's face freeze in front of 50 people was the first time in years I felt any power. That's when I knew. The wedding wasn't the story anymore. I was. Don't forget to subscribe. Patricia's mask cracked first. She always prided herself on her composure, but I watched her cheeks twitch as whispers rippled through the ballroom. The kind of whispers that slice through the string quartet and champagne flutes. Ryan stormed over, red in the face, tugging at his perfectly tailored tux. "Emily, what the hell? You couldn't wait to play martyr until after my wedding?" His words were sharp, but his eyes flicked nervously toward the crowd, desperate to contain the damage. And then Allison appeared. Allison, in her beaded gown, every inch of her screaming perfection, except her voice. It was shrill enough to rattle glass. "You're trying to ruin this for me. You couldn't handle Ryan being the center of attention, so you show up looking like some charity case." She actually pointed at my hospital bracelet like it was a weapon. Here's the thing, though. People weren't siding with them. Not this time. A cluster of relatives, some I barely knew, started whispering things like, "Did she really come straight from the hospital?" And, "Why would they even let her?" My Aunt Carol shook her head and muttered, "That poor girl." Patricia tried to get ahead of it. She raised her voice just enough for the nearest tables to hear. "Emily insisted on coming. We told her to rest, but you know how she exaggerates." That word. Exaggerates. It was the same word she used when I was 12 and sprained my ankle falling down the stairs. I'd begged her for an x-ray, and she'd rolled her eyes until the school nurse called CPS. It was the word she used when I had panic attacks in high school, and she told me to stop seeking attention. That word has been my whole life under her thumb. And I could feel it bubbling up, this rage that had been stewing for years. My stitches hurt, my head was light, but my voice came out steady. Loud enough that half the ballroom went quiet. "Exaggerates?" I said. "You told me Ryan's wedding was more important than my surgery. That's why I'm standing here with stitches in my stomach. Because I knew if I didn't show up, you'd all paint me as selfish. Well, congratulations. Here I am." The silence afterward was nuclear. Allison's jaw dropped. Ryan muttered something about me making a scene, but his groomsmen were already shifting uncomfortably, like even they knew how bad this looked. And then, this part I'll never forget, one of the older guests, a family friend named Mr. Hamilton, walked up to me, gently touched my arm and said, "Sweetheart, you shouldn't be here. You need rest. Let me get you some water." That single act of kindness lit the match. Because now, half the room wasn't looking at me. They were looking at Patricia, at Ryan, at Allison, and for the first time I wasn't the problem. But Patricia doesn't know how to back down. She only knows escalation. And when she escalated, she went nuclear in a way that made sure this night wouldn't just be remembered for the wedding. Patricia's voice shot through the ballroom like a fire alarm. "Don't you dare twist this, Emily." She slammed her hand down on the head table so hard a champagne glass toppled and shattered. Gasps rippled across the room. The string quartet actually stopped mid-song. Ryan hissed, "Mom, calm down." But that only made her louder. "I've spent months planning this day, and I will not let my ungrateful daughter ruin it because she craves attention." Ungrateful. There it was again. Like I hadn't been carving myself open just to fit into her picture-perfect family portrait for years. I felt my chest tighten, but instead of shrinking back like I usually did, I stood taller. My hospital bracelet glinted in the spotlight. Allison burst into tears, big, ugly sobs that didn't match the mascara ad princess image she'd been parading all night. She wailed, "Everyone's staring at me like I'm the villain on my own wedding day." The irony nearly made me laugh, but the sound caught in my throat. Guests were frozen, half horrified, half fascinated, like they'd been transported into a reality show meltdown. My cousin Sarah leaned toward her husband and whispered loud enough for 3 tables to hear. "She's crying about herself while her sister just had surgery? Yikes!" Ryan finally snapped. He grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt and growled, "Go home, Emily." Don't make this worse. The pressure on my stitches made me wince, and instinctively I shoved him back. He stumbled into the cake table. White frosting smeared across his tux like a scene out of a slapstick comedy, but no one was laughing. Patricia shrieked, "Look what you've done! Look what you've done!" Her voice cracked and she picked up a centerpiece vase like she might throw it. A couple of groomsmen stepped forward, clearly ready to intervene. In that surreal moment, my mother shaking, Allison sobbing into Ryan's frosting-stained chest, guests whispering like vultures, I realized something bone deep. I wasn't ashamed anymore. I wasn't the outcast in this story. They were. And I knew this scene wasn't the end. It was just the crack in the dam. Because once people saw behind the curtain, there was no stuffing the truth back in. That night, I went home sore, exhausted, but strangely calm. My phone was buzzing nonstop. Texts from cousins, DMs from people I hadn't spoken to in years, even voicemails from family friends saying they finally saw the truth. Patricia, meanwhile, was leaving me raging voicemails about how I'd destroyed Ryan's wedding. But here's the thing, I hadn't even started yet. The reception bracelet stunt was spontaneous. My revenge? That would be intentional. Don't forget to subscribe. Update. Wow, okay. I wasn't prepared for this. I honestly thought maybe a handful of people would read my post, tell me to go no contact or therapy girl, and move on. Instead, my inbox looks like Times Square on New Year's. I've been reading through all your comments between naps. I'm still recovering from surgery, don't worry, I'm taking my meds. And I don't even know how to say thank you properly. Some of y'all had me crying, some had me laughing so hard my stitches hurt. Whoever said, your mom sounds like a Real Housewives villain who never got cast, I owe you one. And to the person who suggested I should have thrown the bouquet at Patricia's face, iconic, tempting. But the big takeaway is this. I'm not crazy. I've spent my whole life being told I exaggerate, I make things up, I'm dramatic. Reading hundreds of strangers confirm what I felt in my bones. That validation hit deeper than I expected. Now for the fallout, because oh boy, it's been nuclear. The morning after the wedding, Patricia blew up my phone with 27 missed calls. She left voicemails sobbing 1 minute, screaming the next. Do you have any idea what you've done to your brother's marriage? And, your selfishness cost us family friends who left the reception early. She also told me I was banned from the family group photos that were supposed to be printed into an album. Like, okay? Ban the girl with fresh stitches, sure, that'll fix everything. Ryan texted me once. You always find a way to ruin things. I hope you're happy. Allison blocked me on everything. Apparently, she posted some long Facebook rant about toxic siblings and negative energy, but my cousin screenshotted it before it got deleted. Let's just say the comments weren't going the way Allison hoped. Lots of people asking why the bride was more worried about a sibling's hospital bracelet than, the actual sibling. And then came the kicker. Aunt Carol, the same one who whispered, that poor girl, at the reception, called me privately. She said half the family is furious at Patricia now. People were muttering about how she's always favored Ryan, how they've looked the other way for years, how maybe this was the first time the mask slipped in public. She told me, sweetheart, you didn't ruin the wedding. Your mom did. All you did was show up as yourself. So, here's where I'm at. I could go quiet, let the dust settle, be the bigger person. But the more I think about it, the more I realize Patricia built this image of the perfect family on my silence. She parades Ryan and Allison around like trophies, while I get shoved in the shadows. Now the cracks are showing. People are finally asking questions, and for the first time in my life, I'm not scared to answer them. I'm done playing their scapegoat. If Patricia wants to act like I destroyed Ryan's wedding, maybe it's time she sees what real destruction looks like. I didn't have to invent revenge out of thin air. Patricia handed me the tools herself. My whole life, she's been obsessed with appearances. Perfect Christmas cards, immaculate dinner tables, smiling family photos and matching sweaters, behind the scenes. Screaming matches, slammed doors, and her guilt tripping me into silence. She didn't care if I was happy, only if I looked happy. And now half the family had seen the mask slip. That was the crack. I just needed to widen it. The first step was subtle. I started talking. Not ranting, not yelling, just calmly answering when relatives reached out. When Aunt Carol called again, I told her the truth. Yes, Mom said Ryan's wedding was more important than my surgery. That's why I showed up with the bracelet. I didn't want her spinning it later. Carol gasped, then muttered, I knew it. Then came cousin Jenna. She asked if it was true that Patricia refused to visit me in the hospital. I didn't embellish, didn't dramatize, just said, she texted me about wedding photos while I was still hooked up to IVs. Jenna went dead quiet, then said, that's actually evil. Word spread faster than I expected. Family friends started DMing me, saying they'd always wondered why I seemed left out of things. One even said, it was like you didn't exist in their world unless Ryan was involved. Hearing that from someone outside the family felt like oxygen after drowning. But Patricia caught wind. Oh, she caught wind. I know, because she showed up at my apartment unannounced, pounding on my door so hard my downstairs neighbor texted me. When I cracked it open, she shoved her way inside, eyes wild. You think you're clever, don't you? She hissed, whispering lies to everyone, turning them against me. Do you want to kill me with stress, Emily? Is that it? Her voice was so loud the couple across the hall peeked out. I just stood there, calm, and said, I'm not whispering anything, I'm just telling the truth. That sent her into full meltdown. She grabbed a photo frame off my shelf, me and Jake from college graduation, and hurled it at the wall. Glass shattered everywhere. My heart raced, but I didn't flinch. She screamed, cried, threatened to cut me off. From what, exactly? She's never supported me. Finally, she stormed out, slamming the door hard enough that a chunk of plaster cracked near the frame. It should have rattled me. Instead, it steeled me. Because now I knew Patricia wasn't untouchable. She was unraveling. The wedding spectacle had given me a platform I never had before. People were already whispering, already questioning. I didn't need to lie, didn't need to exaggerate. All I had to do was shine a light. So I made a decision. Patricia had her perfect family album planned. Those professional photos she spent thousands on. The ones she bragged would be timeless. What if, at the exact moment those glossy pictures were supposed to prove her narrative, everyone saw the truth instead? That's when the idea for my revenge clicked. And it was going to be sweeter, more symbolic, and more permanent than anything she could have imagined. The family album was Patricia's pride and joy. She'd been talking about it for months, how it would be this heirloom passed down through generations. She booked the most expensive photographer in town, bragged about the leather-bound cover, and even planned to display the proofs at Ryan and Allison's post-honeymoon brunch. That was my opening. See, the photographer, Megan, late 20s, sweet and no-nonsense, was actually a friend of my college roommate. We'd met at a few parties back in the day. When I heard her name come up, I dug through my contacts and messaged her. Hey, this is Emily. Don't know if you remember me, but I heard you shot my brother's wedding. Megan replied almost instantly. OMG, yes, I remember you, and yes. Girl, what even happened that night? That cracked the door open. I told her I couldn't get into details, but that Patricia was known to edit family history. Megan laughed, then dropped a bomb. Funny you say that. Your mom already asked me to crop you out of some of the shots. I swear my stomach turned ice cold, then hot with rage. Patricia hadn't even waited a week before trying to erase me. That's when I pitched Megan my idea. I'd pay her double, out of my savings, didn't matter, if instead of cropping me out, she gave me copies of everything, unedited. The raw truth. Megan hesitated at first, but admitted she thought the whole situation was messed up, and she didn't like being told to rewrite history. She agreed. The photos landed in my inbox 2 weeks later. Hundreds of them. Ryan smearing cake on his tux, Allison mid-sob, Patricia with that deranged look mid-scream. And there I was in the middle of it all, pale but steady, hospital bracelet flashing under the reception lights like a badge. Perfect. I didn't blast them all at once. That would have been too easy, too obvious. Instead, I started with a carefully chosen set. Me and Ryan together, him glaring, me fragile, but smiling through pain. Captioned it on Facebook. Despite everything, I wanted to be there for my brother on his big day, fresh out of surgery. Family first, right? The comments section exploded. Old family friends, co-workers, even Allison's bridesmaids started chiming in. Wait, you had surgery the day before? Why didn't anyone mention this? Emily, you look like a warrior. Patricia texted me in all caps within hours. Delete that post now, you're embarrassing us. But here's the kicker. The post wasn't just mine. Other relatives started sharing it. My cousin Jenna added, I was there. Emily looked like she could barely stand, and Patricia told her she was exaggerating. Aunt Carol chimed in too. Proud of you for showing up, Emily. Some people forget what real strength looks like. The ripple turned into a wave. Suddenly, Patricia's perfect wedding was remembered not as some grand event, but as the day her daughter showed up in pain while she melted down in front of everyone. And I wasn't done. The real revenge, the permanent kind, was about to drop. Update 2. Y'all, I thought the first post blew up, but after the photos hit Facebook, it's like I detonated a bomb in the middle of my family tree. I've been trying to keep up with DMs, but every time I refresh, there are 10 more. Some of you are absolutely savage. Whoever said Patricia is giving main character energy in a villain origin story nearly made me choke on my tea. So here's the fallout so far. Patricia is losing it. She called me 12 times yesterday, alternating between sobbing, "Why are you doing this to me, Emily?" and raging, "You are dead to me. Do you hear me? Dead." At one point, she even screamed that I was slandering her. Except, it's literally photos. Her face, her tantrum, her words caught on camera. There's nothing to slander when the truth is sitting there in high definition. Ryan hasn't said much except one text. You've humiliated me. Which, buddy, frosting all over your tux did that, not me. Allison, on the other hand, went nuclear on Instagram. She posted some half-baked rant about energy vampires and toxic siblings who can't stand to see love thrive. It backfired. The comments were brutal. People dragged her for caring more about her wedding aesthetic than her sister's health. She locked her account by the end of the night. The family is split. Aunt Carol is openly defending me, calling Patricia heartless. Cousin Jenna shared my post with the caption, "Proud of you, Emily, for finally telling the truth." But then there are the loyalists. Uncle Mark texted me some garbage about airing dirty laundry and family unity. Yeah, unity built on me shutting up while Patricia steamrolls everyone. No thanks. Here's the wild part, though. Strangers, people who weren't even at the wedding, are now in my corner. Friends of friends, co-workers of cousins. Even the photographer, Megan, messaged me privately. Honestly, I'm glad those photos are out there. People should see what really happened. And it's working. Patricia's image, the one she's spent decades polishing, is crumbling. People don't see the graceful hostess anymore. They see the woman screaming at her post-op daughter for ruining a wedding. I can feel it. The tide has turned. For once, I'm not the black sheep. I'm the truth teller, the survivor, the one who finally dragged the family's ugly reality into the light. And Patricia? She can't stand it, which makes this next step, the permanent nail in her perfect album coffin, so much sweeter. Because the wedding album, the leather-bound legacy she bragged about, it's almost finished. And let's just say, the photos Patricia begged Megan to crop me out of aren't the ones going into print. Not anymore. The wedding album delivery was supposed to be Patricia's crowning moment. She'd been talking about hosting a little viewing party at her house. Champagne, hors d'oeuvres, and the whole 9 yards. A chance to relive the magic. What she didn't know was that Megan and I had already worked out a deal. Patricia thought she was getting her curated fairy tale version, with me cropped out or pushed to the background. Instead, Megan printed the real album, every unfiltered shot. Ryan with frosting smeared across his tux. Allison mid-sob, mascara running. Patricia's face twisted in rage, fingers stabbing the air at me. And there I was in the middle of it all, sallow from anesthesia, stitches hidden under my dress, hospital bracelet catching the light like a scarlet letter. Megan told me she'd deliver the package herself, professional courtesy, which meant I got the play-by-play later. Patricia opened the book like it was the Holy Grail. The first few pages were normal, ceremony shots, rings, the kiss, but then came the reception, and there it was. Me, pale but steady, standing across from my mother as she screamed. The caption Megan added for context? Candid moments tell the real story. Patricia went ballistic. She called Megan a fraud, accused her of sabotage, demanded she take it all back and reprint. Megan, God bless her, just told her calmly, "These are the photos you paid for, raw coverage. If you don't like reality, maybe you should have behaved differently." Ryan tried to intervene, flipping through the pages like he could somehow rearrange them with his bare hands. Allison shrieked, "You can't show people this. They'll think we're monsters." But here's the kicker. Relatives had already started arriving. Patricia wanted her audience, and now she had it. They all saw. Aunt Carol gasped out loud. Cousin Jenna started recording on her phone. Yes, recording Patricia's meltdown. One of Ryan's groomsmen muttered, "Holy crap, I didn't realize she was this bad." The whispers started again, the same way they had at the reception. Except now there was no denying it. The evidence was right there, bound in leather. Patricia grabbed the album and actually tried to rip a page out. But Megan had used heavy archival paper. It wouldn't budge. She screamed, slammed the book shut, and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a thud and slid to the floor, wide open on the page where Ryan had me by the arm, face twisted in anger, frosting smeared down his sleeve. The photo looked like something out of a courtroom exhibit. And in that moment, everyone saw the truth. Not the glossy fairy tale Patricia wanted. The truth. I wasn't in the room when it happened. I got all this secondhand from Jenna and Carol. But when I saw the video later, my whole body shook. Not from fear, from release. Years of being silenced, erased, minimized. And now, Patricia couldn't erase me if she tried. The album was supposed to be her legacy. Instead, it became my revenge. The fallout didn't take weeks. It took hours. By the next morning, the video Jenna recorded of Patricia losing it over the wedding album had made its way through every corner of the family. Patricia shrieking, Ryan red-faced with frosting stains, Allison screaming about monsters, all of it, caught in full clarity. And me, standing there with my hospital bracelet, steady as stone in the middle of their chaos. The story spread faster than wildfire. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me, "Emily, I had no idea. I'm so sorry you went through that." Even people outside the family chimed in. Mutual friends, old neighbors, coworkers of my parents. Patricia's carefully curated image of being the graceful matriarch was shattered. Ryan tried to do damage control. He called a few relatives, begging them to stop circulating that video and whining about how Allison was traumatized. But nobody was buying it. Aunt Carol told him point blank, "Your wife crying over cake isn't trauma. What Emily went through is trauma." Allison, true to form, went nuclear online again. She posted a long Instagram note about toxic cancel culture destroying families, before quietly deleting her account when the comments turned brutal. People weren't siding with her. They were asking why she thought centerpieces were more important than her sister-in-law's health. And Patricia? Silence. For once in her life, silence. No voicemails, no screaming texts, nothing. Which, honestly, scared me more than the meltdowns. But then Carol let it slip. Patricia had canceled her viewing party, stopped showing up at her social clubs, and was ducking phone calls. She couldn't face the whispers. The humiliation was too public, too undeniable. As for me, something inside me finally shifted. For years, I thought surviving in this family meant keeping my head down, swallowing the pain, pretending it didn't cut as deep as it did. But standing in that reception hall, hospital bracelet catching the light, was the moment I stopped being their scapegoat. I wasn't erased anymore. I wasn't invisible. I had receipts, literally bound in leather. And here's the sweetest part. Megan, the photographer, ended up sending me my own copy of the album. When I opened it for the first time, I ran my fingers over the pages and let the tears fall. Not sad tears, relieved ones. Proof, evidence. A record of who I really was and who they really were when the mask fell away. Ryan and Allison's fairy tale wedding will never be remembered for love or vows or flowers. It will always be remembered as the night Patricia publicly exposed herself, the night her golden boy's shine turned sour, the night their perfect facade collapsed. And me? I'm still healing, physically, emotionally, but I don't feel small anymore. I don't feel erased. Because the legacy Patricia fought so hard to control ended up being the story of her undoing. And I didn't even have to lie. All I had to do was show up, stitches and all.